Le pampas anastos, the pampas yamonbel, le pampas de Pakistan, utoling mosi is kake.
Great. We're gonna stop in 2 minutes.
Okay.
Just giving all those-
Say again?
I'm saying I like the fact that I'm so scared to know exactly this.
No,
Because I will be honest.
Okay, so the person certifying students and so I signed there and then those certifiers there.
Yeah. So I think the training is sign it and maybe staff and visuals. And then maybe
I'm gonna do one and ask Shaka.
yeah, and then send it to Shaka. Yeah.
Because he says I have to do one per client.
No, but I don't have to do one, but I
Yeah.
But I think the council will give you a good idea of how it goes about it. Unless we don't use their particular form, we create our own form to submit to
Mm,
like other job has to.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us at our first session of a series of 4. I'll let you know more about that, but on behalf of the LPC, the Study Babalawo and the Advanced Center, we'd like to welcome you all, both here in person and for those who are joining online. Thank you so much. We also have international guests joining from America, from Kenya. One of our panel members is from Kenya as well. So we are so grateful that you are able to join us. I know the time difference, so it's early morning for them in New York, but they need afternoon.
So this is a series that we are going to be doing, a series of 4 dialogues. We'll be doing 2 webinar sessions over the next 2 quarters. The last one ending, the 4th session, ending as another hybrid session here, where we're doing a hybrid again. So it is online and in person as well. That will culminate in Women's Month again. Can I just ask the people that are online, can you just make sure you're muted so that they are able to not hear you this time? So as I said, it's a reminder, hybrid. So as we're speaking, make sure we project our voices. We're going to have an answer and question session. So even though it's from the audience, please make sure you project your voice so that people online can hear you. We also have included a survey. For those joining online, you'll be sent a link. For those here in person, you would be given the survey that you can fill out towards the end of the event, just to give us your feedback, also on what topics you'd like us to cover at the next series, so that we can know what we should be touching on and what is important to you. Also, we are encouraging our guests to follow follow the LPC. You can also follow the Vance Center. They're on Facebook and on X. Or Twitter. I'm not familiar with these new things, so it's Twitter. And any comments you can leave on the LPC website as well, if you don't fill it in on the survey. So thank you everybody again for your attendance. So let's start with our program. I'm going to introduce Adiyobi Boka. She is from the Vance Center, a director there in New York, based in New York. And she's going to tell us about how they started partnering with us in South Africa and what we are going to be doing. So over to you, Adiyobi.
No, thank you so much, Auntie, and thank you, everybody. I hope you hear me.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ada Obi Ebuka. I direct the Africa program of the Cyrus R. Vance Center for International Justice, which is a non-profit program of the New York City Bar Association. It is our great pleasure to finally partner with LPC. We've looked forward to this partnership and we are glad it has come to fruition. And we really thank every one of you for joining us today. So at the Vance Center, we've been working in South Africa for 20 years now. We started with our Africa Legal Fellows program, which basically supported diversity for young Black people in South Africa to attend programs in the US, work in US-based law firms, and return back to South Africa. Many of them now are partners, big corporates, and even own their law firms. But specifically on this project, 2 years ago, now 3 years, right after COVID, with the realization of the impact of COVID and women, and really looking at diversity in South Africa, we observed the gap for women, Black female legal practitioners in the profession. Then our goal was really, so we launched a project that we called the Advancing Women in the Workplace program. And the goal of the project was really to find ways to support Black female legal practitioners in junior and mid-level management and senior level positions to find ways to advance in the legal profession. We did different things. We used information, tools to effectively find ways to address the gap for inclusion for women to middle and then senior management positions in the legal profession. We had trainings, we had mentorship program that now has over 100 participants, both senior and junior legal practitioners, and some of them I see are in the room, and one of them is on the panel today, who you will hear from. Or two of them are on the panel today. Auntie was also a mentor at some point. And so we've actually used a lot of tools. We created what we call the fireside chat that really created spaces for junior legal practitioners to learn from their senior counterparts and really learn through their journey. But in all this, our engagement, something was vital. We wanted to be sure that apart from creating spaces, using tools and creating networks for women to gather and learn from each other, we wanted to be sure we have data. We wanted to be sure there was something we could rely on as we make assertions and really look at where things are. So based on that, we carried out a survey with the idea to just identify the barriers and challenges that affect women of color in the legal profession and really determine why the advancement of women of color to higher positions was very low. So we launched the survey on March 1st this year, and I'll just take you through findings of the survey, which is what activated the new project that we have now, which is really mobilizing the legal profession to support racial equity and look at diversity in the legal profession. And as such, our partnership with the Legal Practice Council, who is a key stakeholder in the sector. And our idea is to really find ways to keep partnering with other key stakeholders to drive this mission and ensure that at the end, we're able to really get women to senior leadership positions. What was the demographic of our survey? We had 81% of the survey respondents were Black. So really showing that our target was really the Black audience. And so every of the findings that we had was majorly from the Black female legal practitioners. 40% of our respondents were single, 38% were married, and 11 were divorced. 72% of our respondents are currently in practice. And most of our respondents, about 60% of them were self-employed and all had their own practice, while about 19% were employed in law firm and 14% was in public interest entities. We also had very smaller proportions that were from NGOs and Chapter 9 institutions. Interestingly, 54% of the women that we interviewed reported family law as their major area of practice. I'm just highlighting these key things just to let us to highlight some of the huge things that we found in the survey. And the survey started with really laying out, apart from the demography, it started with laying out what are the international and regional and national instruments, international and regional instruments that South Africa has ratified, and also looked at the national legal framework that's already in existence. We observed that there are extensive laws and regulations in place in South Africa. So I would say that for us, laws are not really the issue. There is the Constitution, the Employment Equity Act, the Labor Relations Act, the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, the Legal Practice Council. I can just go on. And there was also the Code of Good Practice on the Prevention and Elimination of Harassment in the Workplace. That's the Harassment Code. There's also the Basic Condition of Employment Act. So there were a series of acts that are in place. And that's why we really think that this project and these discussions we're having are important, really stepping out of looking at the laws in place, but looking at how do we fully implement and carry things out. So what were the key findings of the survey? One was really the barriers to advancement. It focused a lot on gender discrimination. It found that women face significant gender discrimination, including being undermined, lack of promotion opportunities, and unequal pay. About 38% felt really undermined, and 23% agreed that they have faced discrimination. The workplace culture was also an issue. The finding was really that the legal profession is male-dominated, with prevalent sexism, bullying, and sexual harassment. There was also the issue of motherhood. Mothers really faced disproportionate disadvantages in terms of workload, income, career progressions. Apart from that, secondly, the finding also looked at discrimination and harassment. And it found that there was widespread discrimination. So looking at about 68% respondents reported discrimination based on race, gender, pregnancy, and marital status. There's also the issue of bullying and sexual harassment. Half of the respondents of the survey has experienced bullying. 69% of respondents have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace, while about 18% indicated that they have been asked for sexual favors to advance their position at work. Really, and there was also the huge issue of underreporting was common due to the power dynamics, the fear of job loss, and victimization. There was also the issue of work-life balance, the idea of finding support for women, for mothers, right? 63% of the respondents believe that mothers are disadvantaged in the legal profession, with a significant decrease in workload and briefs due to family responsibilities. So many of them who were mothers noticed that sometimes some kind of jobs are not assigned to them. When they return from maternity leave, some things are already taken out of their table. So it was really a struggle coming back to work. And many of them really advanced the issue of flexible working hours. So while about 42% found their working hours convenient, 86% agreed that flexible working hours could improve their work-life balance. We also found the issue of systemic bias, really unequal work allocation and briefing patterns. Women, especially Black women, are not briefed as much as their male counterparts, this affecting their career advancement. The consensus among the study participants is that women are not briefed as much as their male counterparts. We found about 89% believe that women advocates are not briefed as much as their male advocates, and 82% agree that briefing patterns differ between Black and white women advocates. There was also the issue of pay parity. There is a lack of pay parity between the male and the female. We had about 47 respondents highlighting this issue. We also found that a lot of women have started their own law firms, And you realize that a lot of them who started this law firm had either worked in big law or at some point left big law. So the issue was, were there things that happened within the law firms that is making them find spaces or create their own spaces where they can make changes and be felt or make impact? So those are the things we want to discover as we go along. We also looked at mental health and well-being. So there was a lot of women reported stress and burnout. 72 reported high level of stress in the workplace. There was a common issue of mental health issues, anxiety, burnout, and depression. What were our recommendations? We looked at equal opportunities. We really advanced that employers should offer equal opportunities and treatment to both male and female legal practitioners. Is it time for us to begin to implement intervention programs to address gender transformation and ensure women are allocated requisite opportunities and resources? There was also the very huge need to address discrimination and harassment. And we believe that organizations need to promptly address these issues, such as bullying, sexual harassment, to ensure a healthy and respectful work environment. Are we thinking about introducing hotlines for easier reporting of bullying and sexual harassment? Thirdly, we advocated, the findings advocated for support for mothers. Thinking about implementing flexi work arrangements such as commuting or flexi hours to really help mothers manage their time and family responsibilities more effectively. There's also the idea of providing support, having support systems that ensure mothers are not disproportionately burdened or hindered in their professional growth. There's also the finding that there's a need for us to look at culture shift. How do we begin to think about promoting a culture shift in the legal profession to eradicate toxic elements and foster inclusivity? Then there was issue of mentorship program, which is something that we're very passionate about and currently run in South Africa and really looking for more partners. So many of the survey respondents agree that there's a need to develop mentorship initiatives, really focusing on empowering women, especially women of color. I'm trying to race through to be sure I keep the time, but these are just very key findings of this, right? And we're looking at this new project we're having, this discussion and this spaces will begin to address some of the findings of the survey. We're happy to share copies with you, and we believe that this first series, amongst other things that we're working on, will begin to look for ways to address some of the findings of the survey. We're working on launching a gender diversity, equity and inclusion toolkit. That's, I'm sure, with time will also unveil. And so there's a lot of more coming on board, and thank you. And I look forward to the discussion going on and seeing how we can really drive this discussion as we go ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adeobi. Yes, we've done a lot of work and now we are wanting to implement. So I think we must look at solutions now and how we can foster an environment that's inclusive, that would allow women to thrive. Because after all, we're celebrating Women this month. And now I'm going to be introducing our keynote speaker who needs no introduction. I think she's advocated for women her entire life. I've even had to go and check all the stuff she's done. She's just so amazing. So it's Judge Maggie Victor. She qualified as a social worker, then attorney, and then was called to the Joburg Bar to practice as an advocate in 2008. And I think when I started, Judge Victor was at the bar as well. I think we were in the same group at one stage. So I feel very honored that I was with her. But she was elevated to the Johannesburg High Court of South Africa in the Gauteng Division. And then later on served as a judge in the Competition Appeal Court. She served as an acting justice of the Supreme Court of Appeal and then ended up in the Constitutional Court from 2019 to 2021. She's also been the president of the South African chapter of the International Association of Women Judges. That's the WASA Academy as well. She's done phenomenal work over the 25 years. I think one of the things that they highlight is that Judge Victor undertook a massive environmental law case, assisting a small community living in the shadow of an industrial mill. She was the first woman to be elected to the Johannesburg Bar Council and was involved in the call for gender and racial transformation in the leadership structures. So without further ado, I hand over now to our keynote speaker.
Thank you very much, Anthea. Now, to all senior legal practitioners present, attorneys, counsel, and all protocol observed, I want to give a shout out to the collaboration that I hear, the Vaughan Centre, the LPC, and all those organizations. We achieve so much more through synergy than doing this on our own. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to share my journey in a world of gender inequality. And I hear the statistics and the outcome of the survey. And sadly, I can say that the gender transformation is not happening fast enough. My sisters and male allies present, after being in law for 40 years, it has never been clearer to me that our North Star must remain our uncompromising and watertight commitment to addressing the gender inequality for women lawyers that face not only in South Africa, but also on the continent of Africa. But simultaneously with all this, we must not forget the plight of other women in other jurisdictions. I think of Afghanistan, where 2 women judges were murdered when Kabul fell. I also think of the women judges in Afghanistan who had to flee into the diaspora because they were going to be killed and probably stoned to death. I also think of the sons of women in Afghanistan who go to school under the Taliban while daughters stay at home. And so what is happening? This way they are entrenching generational inequality in society. But I want to touch on my unlikely journey into law, looking back these 40 years. I experienced gender discrimination. What I want to tell you how I coped with that, and I still think that there's an enormous amount of work that must be done. And the work that is being done must still be springboarded forward. As the speaker said, there has to be a change in culture. It's so sad that after 40 years, I can't say there has been a proper change in culture. Perhaps I should explain how my journey began. I grew up in a remote valley in the province of the Eastern Cape, on a little farm in a beautiful valley, quite close to Komani, formerly known as Queenstown. And I grew up in a valley where Xhosa Queen Nonisi, had ruled the area 100 years before I was born. She was an incredible warrior queen, and this stood out to me. She outmaneuvered the British. If you know about the frontier wars, she outmaneuvered the British soldiers, all those colonial forces. She was a genius at strategic tactical moves. And it seems to me, my sisters and male allies, we've got to be strategic in what we do if we really want to succeed. And my other mother, Manongwazi, she would describe the work of Queen Nonisi taking on these British soldiers. This queen also did not, this is now 150 years ago, she did not allow during her reign the Ukutwala practices. So she was an incredible woman. So that was my early start at looking at life and the leadership and strategic planning by women. I grew up where people around us, the community was our family. And the concept that it takes a village to raise a child was alive in the community that I grew up in. Ubuntu was the prevailing and entrenched philosophy without exception. I grew up at a time when the terrors of apartheid were inflicted on our neighbors. As you know, the apartheid government sought to balkanize South Africa into separate ethnic areas where white people got the wealthiest areas. I remember the day when the apartheid government forcibly removed my friends and neighbors from our valley. How I still remember the trucks and the white soldiers that took away everything. I was 9 years old, and my dearest friends, Deliwe and Nongotololo, and their parents were taken and dumped in those terrible areas of Dimbaza, Sada, and here the Winterveld, to name but a few. They were apartheid dumping grounds. That is where my young mind saw how race and the plight of Black women intersected. I did not know or even have a clue about the jurisprudential concept of intersectionality of race and gender. That was a concept I finally was able to articulate when I scribed the case of Sylvia Mahlangu versus the Minister of Labour, when I sat as an acting judge in the Constitutional Court. You remember that COIDA expressly prohibited domestic workers from being compensated if they were injured on duty. All that is behind us. And I still remember how I used to plead with my parents to go to Dimbaza. I wanted to see my friends, Deliwe and Nongotololo, but it was impossible. We had to have permits, and they never granted permits. There was no social media. There were no telephones, can you imagine? No post offices in Dimbaza and Sada. But colleagues, we've come a long way from those bitter days and painful days. But it seems to me that the fight for gender equality is not over. We hear that all the time. That experience in that beautiful valley was, of course, a pivotal moment in my life. It was an inflection point for me. But after that pain, I suppose I became fearless. I qualified as a social worker, but I soon realized that in an apartheid regime, social workers could not make a difference and could not bring about social change. I ultimately became a lawyer and went to the bar as an advocate. I was one of 6 women at the bar in 1984. And we were only briefed in divorce cases and unopposed applications if we were lucky enough to get pass-on work from our male colleagues. But my fighting spirit at the bar saw action when I was briefed by the late Priscilla Jana and Lona Tip to appear in treason trials, defending young people charged with arson and stone throwing. I was also in the famous Alexandra 5 trial, where the formation of street committees and communities wanting to do better was considered to be treasonous. My leader was David Soggett. And as this evidence emerged, he would say, Margie, go and find witnesses to counteract this allegation. And I, together with 2 young men, would walk the dusty streets of Alexandra Township looking for witnesses. And finally, the case succeeded, as we know. I then did another case in East London. Professor Kathy Albertine was part of the team, where we got 7 young men off death row. They had been sentenced for treason, and all they were doing was trying to make South Africa better, and we got them off death row. And I asked rhetorically, 40 years later, how much has changed in a substantial sense for women lawyers? Of course, there have been changes, but I ask rhetorically, is it enough? Today, I see attorney Kathleen Motolo-Lepu sitting here. She and now Justice Daisy Molefe set up an exciting all-Black women lawyers practice in the Carlton Centre in the CBD of Johannesburg. Then the Carlton Centre was a very smart building and very expensive. Well, their mission was to empower women lawyers and women advocates as much as possible. They succeeded in this endeavor. And Kathleen briefed me in matters, even one on securitization, a concept with which lawyers at the time were not familiar with. So, Poti, I thank you for that springboard in my career. I will work with that. When I started off as an article clerk in the early 1980s, typists used carbon paper and Tipex to make changes. Then came the golf ball typewriters. Then came the photocopy machines. And guess who had to do the photocopies? Women clerks. And we had to run into errands. We had to go to court and get process stamped and issued. And we never got to go to council. Only the male clerks got to go to consult with council. Anyway, I saw beyond the photocopy machine. I looked at the horizon. And as Anthea said, I was elected. I was the first woman to be elected to that very male bar council. And Dali Mpofu was also with me, elected to be the first Black advocate on the bar council. But guess what portfolio they gave me? Tea convener and social convener. But you know what? I again looked over the horizon. My moment came when Chief Justice Ismail Mohammed was made Chief Justice. So you know what I did? I invited every Chief Justice from every country in the world to attend that gala dinner. And it was such a success. And, you know, my male colleagues on that bar council just looked at me. But I thought of Queen Nonisi and how important it was to draw the battle lines in the sand. And as Kamala Harris, hopefully the next and first US Black woman president, she says, when we fight, we win. So remember that in this fight, in changing this culture that we have to change, when we fight, we win. Although South Africa has seen an increase in women participating in decision-making, we have a female Chief Justice now, and now a female Minister of Justice. Bridget Mabandla was the first female Minister of Justice. But despite the fact that women lawyers have reached these echelons, my sense is that there is still a disproportionate number of men who are getting the best leadership positions in the legal profession, the best briefs and the best work. All that is still going to male legal practitioners. When I was a judge, and some of the senior counsel, bless them, they would line up with a team of, especially in the competition court, male advocates. And then I would say, but are there not women competition lawyers? And, you know, this change came about slowly. But sadly, the briefing patterns and providing adequate and substantial work, especially to Black women lawyers, is still sadly lacking. I must say that young Black women advocates and lawyers are addressing this in liaison with the banks and attorneys firms. And we, as perhaps the more senior lawyers, we must add our shoulder to their wheel when they call on us, and if we need to. We just have to assert ourselves and make sure that commerce, the banks, and the state, when they pay on time, is really springboarding women in the legal profession into better work. It's no good just for the state attorney to send women to do the parole work in court and the refugee work. Women must be given substantial briefs and paid on time. I've seen women counsel and women attorneys come and go. They just give up after a few years, and those are the people that we must support. They're just not given good work, and then they're unable to earn good fees. They can't arrange their family life properly in the best interest of the children, and many of them are single moms. But I see this survey, I'm hoping, will yield a lot of important work. Now, the glass ceiling is cracking. We remember that Judge Lucy Mailula was the first Black woman judge. When I was at the bar, things were very bad for women, but I don't know how much that has improved. I shared a chamber with Judge Thokozile Masipa, and we were so happy when she was elevated to the bench. And we shared chambers. And the first matter I had before Judge Masipa, I said to my attorney, oh, that judge and I shared chambers. And it was an urgent application, and you can't believe it, Judge Masipa just dismissed my case flying. But that's the role of a judge. You've just got to be absolutely objective, and it doesn't matter who your friend is. Now, how did I break the gender barrier, or have I broken it at all? Bear in mind, as the saying goes, unless all women are free from the yoke of gender bias, no woman can ever feel free. And Emma Harris, a feminist writer, says that until we are all free, we are none of us free. I now move on in my address to the importance of the concept of intersectionality. It is a concept that we must focus on with razor-sharp analysis. One of the most articulate and earliest proponents of this concept of intersectionality was the Black feminist writer, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. In 1989, Professor Crenshaw first postulated the idea of intersectionality in her essay, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex. To illustrate intersectionality, she suggests that domination and discrimination should be thought of as a four-way traffic stop in an intersection in which injury or a car accident can come from any direction. If an accident happens in the intersection, it can be caused by cars and what other vehicle traveling in a number of directions, and sometimes from all of them. Now, similarly, if a woman is harmed because she is at an intersection, her injury could result from sexual discrimination, from racial discrimination, from class discrimination, educational discrimination, or marital discrimination, or simply being a woman. And we have to watch very carefully when we do our cases on this effect of intersectionality, and also when we look at the future paths of women lawyers, how are we being treated? Is this marginalization as a result of intersectional discrimination? Remember, if you're a woman, if you're Black, if you're a lawyer, or if you're a domestic worker, like the case of Sylvia Mahlangu, are you experiencing discrimination in an aggregated form? And this is not aggregated, but aggravated form. And this is what we've got to look at. We now face other challenges as women. We now face the challenges of artificial intelligence. We as women must not be left behind. Let's call in our sisters and male allies in those specialized fields to inform us and do workshops with us. Those algorithms running AI have built-in biases, and they have got built-in gender biases. It may not be deliberate, it may be deliberate, because if only male judges' rulings and male counsels' heads of argument are fed into the AI sphere, then those algorithms will move in a biased, gender-biased way. We must make sure that that does not happen. And you know what? The challenges are so many, but AI, we don't want AI to take away your work. And then just to give an overview that whilst I was a judge and I was the vice president of the South African chapter of the International Association of Women Judges, I spearheaded a mentorship program. It started in Johannesburg, and we had 400 final year law students, and we gave them a little internship with judges, with attorneys, with advocates. And when they went for their interviews, they could say, I've done a little internship. I know how the High Court works. And it was such a springboard. Then I also spearheaded and started a sexual and gender-based program, enabling learners and especially female learners to empower themselves. And I was so
What's Amanda Printon taking romance?
Sorry.
I was so happy the other day when I was invited to address 150 learners from 9 provinces in South Africa. The Minister of Social Development was there, Minister Tolashi, and the Deputy Minister of Education was there. And they are taking the sexual and gender-based violence program forward together with the South African chapter of the International Association of Women Judges. So now the landscape, it seems to me, remains skewed in favor of men. But we've got to continue our initiatives to support women in the profession, especially in their early years, because we see how women have to drop out. And, you know, we've seen how Ketanji Jackson Brown was the first Black woman elevated to the United States Supreme Court. And you know what? Nothing is out of reach for us. We know that as South Africans, everything is possible. An apartheid regime was toppled by the people. And why can't we topple this gender bias against women lawyers? In conclusion, it is now our turn to do what generations of women lawyers have done before us. Bear in mind, it is only 100 years that we've been allowed to practice as lawyers. But we must be guided by optimism. Now, after my talk, I don't want us to feel despondent. We must be guided by optimism and faith of those women whose shoulders we stood on. Remember, when those first women applied to be lawyers, it was said that they were only good enough. The then appellate division dismissed their appeals and said they were only good enough to be at home and to nurture the next generation. But we've got to fight for gender equality in this country that we love. We've got to fight for those gender equality ideals that we cherish. And I look around and I see successful women legal practitioners. And you know what? As a successful legal woman practitioner comes an awesome responsibility. Responsibility comes with privilege. And we've got to help our young women lawyers rise. And as we rise, we must lift. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judge Victor. And it's so true that we are inspired to see that Judge Victor went all the way from a social worker to a constitutional court judge. How much more can we do if we just support one another and lean on one another? And I thank you so much, Judge Victor, again. And before we hand over to our panel, I see we've reached our maximum meeting capacity for the online. I think we're about 100 people. And I think for our next webinar, I think we must make the online a lot bigger, because I think there's a lot more people that would like to have joined us to hear what we have to say. So now I'm going to call on our panel members. I think we'll just grab some chairs. They're going to bring it forward into Betty, and then we have one lady online as well for the panel. Thank you. Should be the middle.
She's arranging something.
We can start. Oh, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mtividi Rampete. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Yes. All right. My name is Mtividi Rampete, and I'll be your moderator for this panel session. It is my absolute honor to do this moderation, especially after hearing just Victor's story. It's so inspiring. So I think all of us are motivated to do better. So in terms of just the format of our panel discussion, we're going to have opening remarks, and then each panel members will be given 1 minute to give a brief introduction of themselves, and then we'll dive into the questions. And the fourth element will be we'll have a Q&A for the audience. Those who are here in person and those online are welcome to start jotting down their questions that we'll take towards the end of the segment. And lastly, we'll do a closing remark. Just in terms of the panelists, we have one colleague joining us from Kenya. Fungai, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone.
All right. All right, thank you. Now to start off, welcome to this panel discussion. I'm delighted to have you here with us. Those of us who are here, thank you for making the time, and those online, thank you for joining us. The panelists, I will start with Fungai from Kenya. To kindly introduce yourself, please, just 1 minute, brief introduction, ma'am. Fungai, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wangui Kanyaru. I am a partner at a law firm in Kenya called ALN Kenya. We actually are part of an independent alliance of 16 law firms in 16 different countries. My practice is in corporate and commercial law, and I lead our graduate recruitment program for the firm, as well as our mentorship program for young lawyers. I studied law in the US, so I'm both New York qualified and Kenyan qualified, and it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon.
Excuse me, I'm recovering from flu. Thank you, Ngai. And on my left, I'll ask Kathleen Lepu to kindly introduce herself. Just 1 minute, ma'am, if you don't mind.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kathleen Lepu. I'm a managing director of Independent Watens, and my firm is almost 35 years. And I've been 35 years in practice, and it was formed, as Judge Victor said, it was basically to take on female attorneys, to train them. Because when we were having articles, some of us were trained by men, and it became so difficult. It looks like we wanted to prove a point, But for now, I'm a managing director, I'm a conveyancer, I'm a notary. I serve on the company's tribunal. I'm everywhere, even at the LPC. So you have to be everywhere. Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen. And on my immediate right, I have Annabelle Thomas. Kindly introduce yourself, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Annabelle Thomas. I'm in-house general counsel for L'Oreal, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa. I understand that I might be in the minority in terms of being in-house counsel, but I think, and I hope that some of what I have to share will resonate with all of you in practice as well. I'm an attorney of about 20 years experience. Apart from having done my articles, I've been in-house ever since. Happy to be here this afternoon and meet a lot of you who I've never met before.
Thank you. And next, last but definitely not least, is Annette Cook. Please introduce yourself, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ntividi. Honorable Justice Victor and all our colleagues, beautiful legal practitioners in this room, the online presence. It's an absolute privilege for me to be here today to see that women are absolutely making a difference. Currently, I'm the senior manager in the office of the Executive Officer of the South African Legal Practice Council. Our offices are on Midrand. We deal with all the policy issues right there in the Midrand office, and then we have 9 provincial offices. I'm also an attorney at heart, very passionate about the profession. And it's a lovely to meet you, and I'm sure we're going to have a lovely dialogue and discussion to see where the regulator can make a difference and has made a difference. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, all panelists. And now for just introducing the topic, we know that it's only been 100 years that women have been allowed or officially permitted to become legal practitioners in South Africa. And last year, South Africa has celebrated democracy, and this democratic dispensation has ushered in constitutional era. The Constitution, as we all know, is based on principles of equality enshrined in the Bill of Rights, particularly Section 9. Now, what came about as a result of the Constitution is a progressive legislation that seeks to empower women. We know there's a whole list of legislation that's been promulgated to ensure that there's equality in terms of race, in terms of gender in the country. What we now at the point of seeking to achieve is to make sure that the legislation that currently exists gives meaning to the purport and intention of the actual legislation that it subscribes to. And for us to be able to do that effectively and in the most fair manner, we need to develop strategic policies. So the topic for our discussion today is, as you will note from the agenda, is the panel will be exploring experiences and strategies of differing jurisdictions and areas of legal profession on how we can effect career advancement to ensure gender equality in the legal profession. And to kick us off on that topic, we are going to ask Wungai, who's connecting from Kenya. Wungai, if you're ready, I have a set of questions for you. And also to the panel members, feel free to have a conversation. So let it not be a ping pong match or, question, but you're free to engage and, add as and when you feel necessary with the question that is posed to a particular panelist. But Wungai, would you kindly share, in terms of the Kenyan jurisdiction, what policies are there to effect gender equality in the legal profession?
Great, thanks so much. As I share the policy framework in Kenya and some of the issues and the potential solutions that we've talked through, I thought it might be helpful just to contextualize how the bar is structured in Kenya. So we do not have a bar, and the trajectory for legal education and practice involves a 4-year LLB degree post high school, followed by a 1-year postgraduate diploma and taking of the bar exam, and then a 6-month pupillage or articles equivalent, and then subsequently admission to the bar as an advocate. And advocates practice both in court and in non-contentious matters. So that's just to set the context of the profession. From a constitutional perspective, we do have constitutionally enshrined female representation at all levels of government, and in fact, a requirement for a 2/3 gender representation in Parliament, which unfortunately to date has not fully been realized in terms of actual elected posts. But there's a constitutional sort of understanding and framework that requires women to be not just counted when it comes to votes, but really counted when it comes to public participation, governance, and accountability. Within the profession, what we've seen in the last probably 5 to 7 years has been a situation where we have about 47% of all women admitted to practice, of all people admitted to practice to the bar in Kenya as being women. So we have female representation at the bar that's almost equal to male representation. Starting from the late 90s, we saw a steady increase and now a plateau where we're almost at 50-50 and likely getting there. The other trend we've seen actually is that a lot more women are going into law school, a lot more women are graduating in the top quartile or half of their law school classes. A lot more women are applying, for jobs within the profession. So I think the policy framework that has accelerated women's participation in the profession has really been driven by access to education. Starting in the early 2000s, the government instituted a universal free education policy at primary school level, which then transitioned into high school. And you just had that much more of a push to get more girls into education and that much more push to get into university. So I'll stop there from a framework. The framework within which women are rising in the profession is a broader sort of legal and legislative one. There haven't been too many specific sort of gender-focused actions to try and increase female participation. In a way, women have been beneficiaries of a broader social reorientation around access to education and opportunity, but they face the same challenges as were highlighted in this report in terms of longevity in the profession. And that's definitely something I look forward to getting more into as the discussion continues.
All right, thank you very much for those interventions. Maybe just when we proceed to the next panel member, can you start thinking around what have you have identified the challenges as you just mentioned, but what opportunities are there that you see as possible plug-ins in terms of addressing the specific challenges? Then I'll come back to you once I finish this round. Annabelle, I'll start with you. As an in-house corporate counsel, what corporate policies are in place to ensure that women move up the corporate ladder in the space?
Okay, thank you. I think I need to start by saying, and all respect to the honorable judge, that it's quite disappointing to hear every time a woman achieves something great, usually it's accompanied by the comment, "Oh, you've just shattered the glass ceiling." And while the achievements are really great and need to be acknowledged, the glass ceiling should never have existed to start off with. It shouldn't be in 2024 still an achievement to be breaking the glass ceiling. It shouldn't exist at all. So I'm not necessarily coming from the perspective that it's women to the exclusion of anybody else, but that we all have a seat at the table as long as the door is equally open to all of us, to take it, to walk through it, and to make of it what we need to. So, from my perspective, having been in-house counsel for the past 20 years of my career, what I can say is that within corporate, there has been a lot of significant move. We're definitely not there yet. We see a large number of women employees within the corporate environments, not necessarily translating into the executive kind of leadership roles within organizations, but there is a significant move. I can say that I'm fortunate enough to be employed by an organization where the reverse is true, where we, as an executive team, we're being tasked with employing more men in the organization because it's so highly empowered. So that's a good example of the progress that's been made within the corporate environment. So simple things like, and simple, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, I mean that it's easy enough for employers to create these kinds of policies, these kinds of environments to facilitate the advancement of women's career in the workplace. So as an example, we understand that even in 2024, the scale is still skewed towards women in terms of your general caregiving, nurturing kind of activities, right? In as much as I also have the benefit of having men around me who are hugely supportive of my career and and the demands that are placed on me from a career perspective, both in my family and in my work environment, I think there still is that skew. So one of the comments that we've heard from Adiobi is around flexible working environments. In my experience, that allows for women and men to be who they are in every kind of facet of their lives. Whether you're a mom, you choose not to be a mom, you're a dad, you're a brother, you're a sister, you're an employee, you're a change maker, etc. The flexible environment allows us to identify and give priority to all of those different areas in our lives, which are important, without the exclusion of any one of them. So I've seen, particularly in my own experience within my own teams, etc., that I find that I enjoy my work a lot more when I'm given the flexibility to do it either at home or at work, obviously with the right kind of attitudes and levels of accountability, etc., around it. But I think if you've cultivated a leadership team who buy into the well-being of the person who's fulfilling the function, whatever portfolio that is, it's easier for the leadership to understand and promote policies like this. Because I think in the environments we have seen flexible work not work, are environments where people view flexible working environments as an opportunity for people to shirk, to hide behind the camera on your computer, etc. But I think once people have the trust and the level of accountability, they actually surprise you and they prove the opposite to be true. So that's definitely something that we've seen work in the corporate environment. Equal pay between genders. I mean, in the corporate environment, the organization as a whole has a lot of accountability, be it from shareholders, the board, the various committees of the organization, and then as prescripts of legislation. So, there has to be a level of parity, especially now we see the Companies Act having been amended. There has to be parity in terms of salaries that you're going to be disclosing publicly, etc. These are the kinds of things that also help. We've spoken about anti-harassment and discrimination policies. I think if organizations take pride in and really empower ethics officers in their organizations, the ethics-related issues as they relate to women are highlighted. And people also feel that they have the opportunity to air any kind of discrimination in the workplace if you've got an accountable, transparent, and fair ethics officer within the organization, obviously with the necessary structures in place so that those elements of discrimination have been highlighted. You also have, a very important kind of point that I've heard from people in other environments, especially women returning from maternity leave. I mean, I had two very interesting conversations recently. One was returning from maternity leave, and on the day that she returned from maternity leave, she was demoted, right? Which is a practice that should never be allowed, right? It should never be allowed because there has to be some protection for an employee coming back from maternity leave in terms of progressing back into the work environment on a gradual basis, understanding the fact that this person returning has now left a really, really newborn baby at home, dealing with the stress of having had to just separate themselves from this child. And if there were performance-related issues, those can be dealt with, appropriately. Obviously, there were things brewing before she went on maternity leave, and people couldn't wait for her to return to address the performance-related issues. And maybe they were, symptomatic of her having been highly pregnant at the time, etc. So again, it's a leadership issue. And how do you deal with the employee in that kind of circumstance? The other interesting conversation I had with somebody who also returned from maternity leave and had to pump her breast milk in the bathroom, right? Now, for me, in 2024, women should not be going through such undignifying experiences. I know that our mother's room at work is somewhere that I wish I could hide out in. I'm not of childbearing age anymore, so I'm not going to be able to make really good use of it. But it's a really, really wonderful space for a woman to feel safe, to have the privacy, to be able to do the things that she naturally has to do as a mom, but also take care of her responsibilities at work. So if she chooses to work from within that room in the privacy of those confines, then so be it. So those are just a couple of things that I think we've seen in the corporate environment, together with kind of well-being conversations around aspects that target women. So like menopause conversations, fertility conversations, etc. So I think I'll leave it there. A lot of what else I have to say will flesh out in the panel discussion.
All right. Thank you so much, Annabelle. That's very insightful, and I like what you say around the issue of when you empower women, the whole community gets empowered. Then because the men will also reap benefits from what programs are intended to benefit women. Without any further ado, and before I leave you, can ask you to also start thinking around. You mentioned a lot of challenges, and maybe just think about how do we overcome those challenges? Few or one or two examples would be fine, and then I'll come back to you. Now, Kathleen, on my left, a veteran pioneer in the legal profession. Please, can you share with us, in your view, your perspective, what are law firms doing to assist women in the legal profession, or what should law firms be doing to ensure that women progression is accelerated?
Oh, thank you, TV. And the challenge I have is that I've got to talk about my law firm. And because it has been a deliberate law firm to empower women. Yes. But even if there are a lot of women law firms, it's quite difficult to empower if you don't have work and if you don't have people from the corporate world or from the state to support you. I would like to, about 2 years ago, I took 7 candidate attorneys, which was 6 were young females and 1 male, because I normally do that. But what hurt me most is that I felt I'm not training them enough because I don't have work. And the more you scream, the more you become an enemy to everybody. For everybody, you scream, when they see me, yesterday I was screaming at the DG. of justice. Why? You keep on saying that 300,000 cases at the state attorney. Why don't you give them to law firms? You get default judgments, you get everything that you can think of. So he says, you have started again. That's what you said to me. But what I'm thinking is that for us as women practitioners, we need to talk more like this. And maybe I was fortunate, like Christine, we grew up in a very, very rough environment. I come from Soweto. I was in Maurice Isaacson, June 16 baby. I went to Teflo, where we attended three months in a year. After the other months, we are on strike. Then you are called to come and write exams, then you fail, you fail again, then they say they're excluding you, So you had to survive. That's why it was so easy for me and Daisy. Because all of us came from Teflo. After serving articles, I told myself I'm going to open a firm and train young female attorneys. But guess what? Once we have opened a female-owned firm, all the other big firms, they wanted to swallow us. They invited us, can we be partners, can we, and we said, but if we didn't do this, you would have come to us. So I always say that you need to have people to talk to, because now I talk until 11 at night with my friend and everybody, because I don't hold anything that hurts me. Yesterday I was angry with the DG, I was angry with everybody, but then I call somebody and say, you know what, then somebody will later calm you down. But what I'm saying that we need to keep on fighting. This morning, because I was fighting with the DJ, I said, DG, this morning I said to my staff, can you just look at all the private, insurance companies and just look at their BEE policy? look under vendor supplier management. Then you must click there and apply. I think they were so angry with me. I said, you must apply to each and every private company because we are tired with the state, you know. And funny enough, sometimes they responded and said, okay, thank you for your CV, but we'll call you, we will, a lot of them responded. But do we really have to do that as we are sitting, or are we? I'm very deliberate in what I'm doing. And there's one person who taught me how to be deliberate is Christine, when we started at the LPC, I was the first person. Anthea was the deputy. It was hard. It was hard. But we told ourselves as women, we are going to pull together and make this thing work. And it worked. We came with policies, the legal sector code and everything. We looked every little chance of getting some policies to empower women within the legal, the LPC. We made sure that even the directors that we employ are women. So it's a deliberate thing. As long as you've got support, you need to support each other as women. And that's why I'm saying that from now on, today, you must go into every company and look at their BEE profile and look at supplier vendor management. Then you click there and apply and let's see. Because if we don't do that, we'll never get the results we want. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that very, very, inspiring intervention. We'll come back to you and check more around what possibilities, opportunities are there for young women entering into the profession. And Annette, I want to now come to you as the representative of the regulator and want to find out what is the role of the regulator in transforming the legal profession.
Thank you so much, Ntibidi. I think I want to go with that fighting spirit. Therefore, I like it. We must not stop fighting. That's really it. We must continue. It's not done yet. We are not done. We haven't even started. For me personally, we're sitting here today and we all want to do the same thing. We want to empower women. For me, knowledge is power. That's it. Just think about it for a moment. It's knowledge or the lack of knowledge that makes you scared and fearing the unknown. If we're knowledgeable on items and if we can stand together and get all of us there, we will be very, very, very united and very strong. We're talking now from the perspective of the regulators, the Legal Practice Council. Just to give you a background, which I forgot, is that I've been involved with the regulator of the legal profession for 19 years. So from a regulatory perspective and as an attorney, and I'm very passionate about being an attorney. In my family, I'm the only person or woman that is an attorney. So I'm very passionate about the profession. And as the regulator, we need to empower women in the profession by ensuring that they are knowledgeable, as I said, on all aspects of the law and the practice of law. Specifically working towards their admission as legal practitioners and even after enrollment. And when they open their own law firms and they're admitted as legal practitioners. The mere fact that you are admitted as a legal practitioner doesn't mean that you now know what to do. Sometimes I've seen that people are admitted and they are just left alone. And at the end of the day, they need to open their own law firms and they're not supported. We as some of us are senior legal practitioners, we need to support each other as women. Yes, it's fantastic to attend a seminar and a webinar and get training, but a one-on-one mentoring session is always the best. That's the only way I do things. I know it's not always possible, but you need only to make a difference in one person's life. You have to start somewhere, right? That's my view. the regulator in that perspective. We can't empower women as a regulator if we've not identified the problems and challenges as we sit here today. That's very important. We can't start solving a problem if we don't know what are the challenges. Now, I'm sure there are many challenges, and our international colleagues would most probably have a similar problem. That is why we have these kind of dialogues. They're very important. And from a regulator's perspective, as I said, the Legal Practice Council cannot make changes if we're not aware of the specific problems faced by women in the profession. The council has quite a lot of power in terms of the Legal Practice Act. The council can influence the amendment of the Legal Practice Act, the regulations to the act, and the rules which affect all of your lives when you practice as attorneys and advocates. But it must start somewhere. So we need to identify that, and it must be from legal practitioners and young upcoming legal practitioners. We need to hear your voice so that we can make changes. What can the council do? As I said, we can make changes. Keep in mind the council has about 8 or 9 specialized committees. Obviously, we do have a transformation committee. None only than our famous Mr. Lepp was the chair of cabinet, was making all those changes, and many other education committees and so forth. But it's through these various committees of the Legal Practice Council that changes can be made to policies. And existing policies, we've actually, there are quite a number of policies, as Mrs. Lepp said, in the last 6 years that we've actually established. But we can make changes to even those policies. The council has the power. And it's through its transformation committee. And perhaps you're going forward, there's even more that we can do, more areas that we haven't even touched on in 6 years. There are so many different areas that will change the lives of candidate legal practitioners, pupils, legal practitioners. Coming back to my first statement, knowledge is power. Power is knowledge. I still believe that we are not doing enough for young legal practitioners. And then sometimes if they don't necessarily fit into the corporate world, they will have to open their own firms. And it's right there in that place where we leave them. They are admitted, they're struggling to pay their admission, their enrollment fees, and to make ends meet on a daily basis. We need to make a better awareness with senior legal practitioners to mentor our colleagues. Just something I would like to mention, I'm sure I have to stop and then give the next person a chance, but something that a Legal Practice Council has done, it's just one thing I'm mentioning because there are quite a number of achievements in the last couple of years. And recently on the 16th of August, through our Professional Affairs Committee and the Council, we have gazetted minimum remuneration for candidate legal practitioners and pupils. That has never been done. We have the power in terms of Law 27(2) to do that. We've done proper consultation with all parties. And it's huge. Obviously, there will be some resistance, but it is huge. Because I remember clearly when I did my articles, I think I got 800 Rand or something.
You were lucky.
I was lucky. So, but anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Annette. Colleagues, you will note that there's a lot that's happening. I mean, in each space, we've had inputs from in-house counsel, from the law firm of Kathleen, as well as what the regulator is doing. And I must say that some of the initiatives or policies that are currently in place in the council, I was not aware. And I think maybe I should blame myself, but I don't think I'm the only one who's not aware. Thank you, Annette, for those informative interventions. And Wangui, are you still there with us? I'm going to link up to you now for the next round of questions. If you're ready, let me know by show of hands.
Yes, I am.
Okay. I like the smile. All right, just moving along quite swiftly. I'm not sure. I asked somebody to do timekeeping for me and indicate when it's time for Q&A. I think we're left with 10 minutes to go through the next round of question. So just picking up from our last intervention with you, Wangai, you mentioned the challenges that are faced in terms of your Kenyan jurisdiction, and also briefly highlighted some of the solutions or opportunities for development or strategies that you have in place. But would you kindly share with us, in terms of the intergenerational mix, what is your approach in terms of integrating new members into the profession? Because obviously the dynamic and the landscape has changed drastically. When we first joined the profession, some of us, I don't want to name when, but yeah, a while back, as opposed to now, the challenges that are encountered by women who are entering the profession, currently. So what in your view has been solutions that are workable that maybe we can piggyback on as South Africa to assist new upcoming female legal practitioners to not only enter the profession, but also have sustained thriving practices? Over to you, Wangai.
Thanks so much. And that's such a great question, because it speaks to that space of opportunity and hope.
Sorry, Wangai, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I think you muted. Please check your mic.
Right. Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you online, so maybe from those in person.
There's something on our end.
It's probably one of those network days.
Yeah. Apparently I'm audible online, but not
Wangai,
necessarily
if you can hear me, please pause for a minute. We can't hear you on this end.
Okay.
I think we have a technical glitch that we're trying to sort out. Please bear with us. Okay. Have you unmuted yourself, Wangai?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you. Please proceed.
Great, thank you so much. So I think it's a great question, because it really does speak to the significant kind of opportunity that exists because the bar is an intergenerational bar. One of the aspects of that opportunity is the fact that younger lawyers are sort of impatient with the status quo, and then they're also not afraid to try new things and fail upwards, as it were. I think the challenge for practitioners who've been in the field longer is that it's taken so many battles to get to where you are. At some point, either you are not quite energized to keep on fighting, or you're just not sure which new front to take on. Whereas younger lawyers are in a sort of much more exploratory and curious phase, even in the context of their impatience with how far things have gone or how far things still need to go. So I'd say the main sort of challenges we've dealt with, and I'm speaking here as a person who's leading our recruitment efforts in our law firm, which is one of the largest law firms in Kenya, as well as then actively involved with the Council of Legal Education and the Law Society of Kenya in trying to address some of the systemic issues. The main sort of issues that have really come through clearly have been the idea that there's a lack of clarity on your career path as a young lawyer. And so you go through this whole process, getting into a position where you're finally qualified as a lawyer and you're not really clear where you're going. And the challenge there that we identified and tried to solve for is the idea that young lawyers start asking questions about career path, about trajectory, about strategic engagement with growth too late, right? When you've finished your traineeship and you've spent your first year trying to get your feet under the desk, and then you're beginning to understand the dynamics of the law firm, and then you're beginning to think about other things happening in your life, whether it's a family or going back to school or trying to answer questions. The important questions you should have been asking about your career path or your vision as a lawyer start late in the process, and then you end up giving up too early. So right at the 3 or 4 year period in your career within an institutional arrangement as a law firm, or a small to mid-sized law firm, or even a large law firm, when people are telling you, wait, now is the time to really dig in, now is the time to really put in the hours and the work and try and grow into a particular trajectory, you're not seeing the value of patience at that stage because you feel like you don't have clarity, so then you leave. So one of the things we've started doing is having the conversation on career paths and options in the law at university level and even increasingly at high school level. So we have, work study programs that are run through different high schools, for example, or different sort of learning institutions. And we try and bring in these students. We've been piloting virtual internships. We've been piloting sort of week-long simulation programs where people start getting a picture of what law might look like early enough as they're building their dream for their profession, so that they know what they need to think about in terms of how they show up, in terms of what they will need, in terms of the types of relationships they would need to have, and speak to lawyers at different stages of their journeys. So our work study program has lawyers who are just finishing their traineeship and starting as advocates, who can speak to what university selection looks like or what being in high school looks like. They're not too far away from that step of the program. You have mid-level lawyers who are further advanced in their careers, are beginning to look at partnership or senior leadership, who again can speak to some of the balance and the changes and the growth they've seen and start actually thinking of themselves as mentors for younger lawyers. And then, of course, you have, the fossils in the room who are able to inspire and cheer on and give a sense of possibility thinking to these younger lawyers who have all these questions that sometimes may not have answers if you're trying to talk to, high school guidance counselors or even parents. There's the rate of change in the profession is so quick that the spaces within which these questions can be asked are few. So in short, in terms of that clarity question, start the conversations earlier. Start building in this idea that the door is wide open. These are all the possibilities ahead of you. These are the potential challenges you may face, and start getting people to think in an empowered way about their agency. Because on day one, the idea of getting a mentor is not as high stakes as on, in year 4, when you're trying to figure out if you have a future in the organization and you're already feeling like the organization hasn't really been fair to you. You may not feel safe enough to ask those questions. I'd say the second challenge about networks and internal and external networking, we recognize that there's a difference between those two things, and that we had lawyers come in and they're sitting at their desks, and then you get to a point where you're told you now need to be networking externally for business, and they don't really know how to do that. Or they come in and they're not internally networked enough to recognize where to build your sponsorship, where to build your mentorship, etc. And so we started doing quite a bit of work, again, as early as possible in someone's trajectory, to talk about just how do you show up, a certain level of self-awareness as a person who can build relationships, build trust, be an advisor, exposure maybe through pro bono activities or clinics where it's low stakes. It's low stakes in terms of the possibility of learning as you go, but then high value in terms of beginning to get comfortable doing certain things. On the small business side, the thing that we've done, especially for women or just people starting out as sole practitioners, has been business mentorship, right? How do you build a law firm? How do you build systems? That's something that the Law Society of Kenya has been actively leaning on large law firms to help provide. So we have, our sort of business services types of teams, whether it's people and culture or knowledge management or business development, start doing training sessions for smaller firms on how these things are done, and even for younger lawyers, so that when you're starting out, you have a bit of a sense of how the business of law works, not just the advisory, but the business. I think that the last thing I'll touch on, because I know we don't have too much time, is the idea of mentorship and competency. So in reading the Sarah Savant's report, the overwhelming point or idea that, women, and in particular Black women, are not seen as competent. No matter what you do, your competency is being questioned, and how that an invisible sort of weight around your neck, it's that thing around your neck, as Chimamanda Adichie wrote in her book, that just keeps you from progressing. So competency is a loaded word. And one of the things we really have been trying to do is recognize the burden of that word is that it does 3 things. One is you underplay your strengths, right? Because if someone tells you you're not competent, you don't even recognize your own strengths. You start fixating on this perceived weakness. And then in that space of fixation, you miss out on growth, right? So we started a process where when we do our performance appraisals and when we do any kind of learning assessments, we start by asking younger lawyers across the board, not just women, but it's been very instructive, asking them how they would rate themselves. So you finish a task or you finish a project, etc. And we ask, how do you think you did and why? And what we found were three quite interesting developments. Very often, we'd have feedback saying, this lawyer did really well. But when you ask them how they think they did horribly. And when you ask them why, they fixate on the one email they sent late, or someone sent them a chaser and they didn't respond and they just feel horrible. And so they must just be completely dreadful lawyers, or, the research they did that came back with this whole markup. And so they're like, God, I don't even know how to do analysis. I am just completely useless. So their self-assessments were often very, very negative. And then we started building in, an ability to affirm them, themselves, right? What strengths do you think you bring? And so people say, oh, I'm just a trainee, right? I'm just, a person who likes research. I just like trying to ask questions in meetings, and flipping that for them, helping them realize, actually, don't minimize your own strengths. You have tremendous strengths. The other thing we ask them to do is rate the department or rate the project, and, on a scale of 1 to 5, and why? Why would you give it a 3 out of 5? What are the 2 points that you feel you took off? And it created a safe space for them to start having their own voice on things they feel could be done better as process issues, and recognize that they need to cultivate self-awareness. Quite often you don't know your own strengths. Quite often you're overstating your weaknesses. And then institutionally, we started changing how we train or how we recognize, because we began to be able to speak. It became a conversation. So in short, leading into the younger lawyers, trying to understand how they're thinking about their challenges and what they think could be done differently is really instructive, because you start to see ways of solving the problem that you may not already perceive because you're too embedded in the institution, or because you're too removed from the day-to-day challenges. And some of these things we're feeding into our law society, others we're just iterating within our firm and continuing to grow. And we're excited to see what the future holds, because the future is actually in their hands. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mungai. That was very insightful. I think the benefit of this dialogue for me is also affording us an opportunity to get lessons or exchange, experiences with different jurisdictions. And we are then able to learn from each other, because the issues that women confront in the legal profession are literally the same when you go on all the jurisdictions. And I like initiatives that you mentioned around in your interface with the new upcoming attorneys, how intentional you've been in your firm and with your legal counsel at your end on trying to bring them on board. Because in as much as we've been in the profession for long, yes, we have wisdom to impart and share with new up-and-coming legal practitioners, but there's a lot that we can also learn from how they approach things. Like you mentioned, that they already come in the space with a lot of agency, and they agitate in a more, they're not apologetic in how they, they want things to be done. So we come from a generation where we like to, dilly-dally and not get to the point. So the mix of having new and old is beneficial in terms of us going forward and taking this movement forward successfully. Thank you. Now, in the interest of time, colleagues, I know I'm doing bad on time, and it's because nobody is telling me time is up, so I have to look at my watch. But we're gonna move swiftly now to the next panel and ask the panelists and ask Annabelle to please share with us. When we left off our conversation earlier, you highlighted the challenges that are there in terms of practicing in the in-house counsel space. But can you just maybe pick to strategies or interventions that you think are relevant and yield more results in terms of addressing the issues that are currently confronting women? Especially, I'm interested in the issues around childbearing and the lack of maternity. I find it very interesting. I don't know why.
Yeah. Look, I spoke about some of the nitty-gritty in terms of how I've seen those particular issues being tackled. But I think at a very high level, what I can say is it starts with the leadership and it ends with every one of us, right? In terms of the range of responsibility when it comes to gender parity. And I say this because I think from a leadership perspective, if we make sure that the leadership of our organizations, whether they're the regulators, corporates, firms, etc., if they're empowered, we've heard that knowledge is power. if they're empowered with the knowledge about the diversity issues that are important in these conversations, they're better equipped to make the decisions like implementing better maternity leave policies, better reintroduction to work post-maternity leave programs, etc. So there's a huge kind of area that we can focus on in terms of developing and empowering the leadership. When I say that it ends with us, I think we all have the power to appoint a female attorney, refer a female attorney, or employ a female attorney. We all have the power to do that. And I think last year I was part of the 2023 mentorship cohort in AWW, and a lot of you might have heard me speak a lot about sponsorship. It's a key area of focus and passion of mine, in that I believe that each one of us can make a difference, a small difference, a big difference, just by sponsoring another female attorney in our environment, however it is. You know, be that person who speaks about somebody else positively when they're not there, right? So when you're in a conversation with a colleague who's looking for a really good M&A lawyer, I'm sure you know really good female M&A lawyers, you know, refer that person. So those are the kinds of things that we can do. The last thing that I'll say is be ready. Every one of you. I mean, what is this fight about? What is this challenge about? What is this drive about? It's about needing to have a seat at the table and be heard. When your time comes and when your seat is ready at that table, are you ready with what it is that you want to say?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annabelle. And now moving swiftly to my next panelist on my left, Kathleen. Just briefly, you've been involved in the legal sector code, in the development thereof. How, in your view, do you see the code assisting women in particular just to progress? If you can briefly share your insights, please.
Fortunately, that's why I'm saying that as women leaders, you need to be deliberate if you want to do something. I was with Christine, with Anthea, we decided to be deliberate, and other women who were part of the council then. Fortunately, Christine knew a lot about BEE, you know, and she did sector codes, and she said, for us to succeed, this triple BEE generic scorecard is not working for us. Go to the BEE access, and I always say, we never read some of this extent. Some of how many of you have read the LPA? You know, so she came and said there's a section 9. It's in the BEE. And that says you can design something called a sector-specific code. Because we are sick and tired of filling in those SBD forms that doesn't make sense to you. You know, whether local, whatever, you know, all those funny questions that come out of it. So we embarked on that, and we were very deliberate. The only unfortunate thing, we were very frustrated by big firms because they didn't want it. Because that sector code is going to change the face of the profession. We are looking at ownership. We are looking at management. We have changed even the thresholds and the scoring points. And so secondly, we are moving for an issue where there'll be a fund, a legal sector fund. Well, that funds young practitioners who are coming into the profession. For instance, like advocates pay for their bar fees, you know, but the seniors, those who have big bucks, they are supposed to actually contribute to that fund, and we have given them a figure how they have to contribute into that. Failing which, they are not going to get work. Because the sector code has teeth. It's unlike the BEE. You know, the BEE, I always say it's one of those things. The sector code will have a council that actually monitors each and every SOE. They can't tell us about the PAJA Act. No, make an application if you want information. The legal sector council will have the power just to say, please give us reports. We need to see how many advocates were briefed, the value, and how many women. And women are on top in our sector code. So, unfortunately, for now, as I'm saying, we are busy. We're supposed to meet the Minister of Justice next week. And we were frustrated by the last Minister of DTI, to be honest. He didn't want to gazette it, but it's already there, and everybody is very afraid of that code because it has so much power to empower. That's why every time when we meet as practitioners, I mean, the last time when we had the minister, the complaints that they had, we said, you know, if they knew that this code is going to address everything that they have. So I'll invite you, once it's there, read the legal sector code, because we have the power to say to government, Christine is not briefing Black females. She can't get the work that she's getting. So it's a powerful tool for us. So that's why I'm saying that it needs to be gazetted within the next 2 months, so that at least we can see I mean, we have been at it for 5 years, almost. Since 2020. Yes, since 2020. You know, it's long, but you can see that it gets frustrated by people who know. Because I can't understand why there are certain firms that are level 1. When you look at management, when you look at ownership, how do they really get to level 1? And by that time, they are competing with you, a small firm, who's a real level 1. Because you know what? They take all the, the non-attorneys and make them managers. So that's how they score their point. I mean, I was in a meeting just before I came here. Fund managers. One from, I'm sorry to say this, from America, says they're level 3. Yeah? Then I said, can you just unpack your level 3? How did you go to that level 3? And they know all these good terms. Yes, project and everything. Yes, I said, just explain to me what you mean by, because what they do, they take the act and take all the nice things that they can claim work from and put them there. But if you say, just drill down to tell me how many women you are empowering, they can't. How many youth you are empowering, you can't. But remember, with the triple BEE, people don't have time to check those things. But with the code and the council, we have time to do that. Okay.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Without any further ado, I think you've touched on Annette's point around implementation of the policies that the council is responsible for. I don't know if, Annette, you want to add on something, because, in terms of the monitoring aspect, for me, that's quite key, because if you don't have a monitoring tool to monitor performance, then you're not going to be able to see the change.
Thank you, Ntibidi. I'll be very short, but you're quite right. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that policies that have been established are implemented. Now, the Legal Practice Council, in terms of Section 5 of the Legal Practice Act, one of the objects, the main object, the first object, is transformational participation. And that's why the council has a transformation committee. And it's the sole purpose of this transformation committee of the council to drive transformation. That's what we do. So it's not something that we will forget. It's a main objective. Just for interest sake, before we go, the Legal Practice Council currently comprises of 23 councillors. 11 of them are women. They have the power. They are there. They are making changes. Just so that you know, the executive officer of the Legal Practice Council is a fantastic woman, Charity Nzuza. She's hearing me now. And from the 9 provincial offices in each province, 7 of those provincial directors are women. We have about 6 or 7 senior managers in the national office. Most of them are women. And currently, after that, and then I haven't forgotten the former chairperson, as well as the current chairperson, are women of the Legal Practice Council. And lastly, more than 55% of our admitted attorneys are now women. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to our panelists. Now, I would like to move on to Q&A for the online participant as well as those in the house. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and I hope somebody's monitoring the online for questions. We have a few minutes to take questions.
Okay, on the screen, if you can just look at the, how do we separate between touting and marketing or networking for prospective clients? I believe touting is regarded as misconduct for advocates. I think that's what they're meaning, not for attorneys. So maybe you can address that. One of the.
Who want to give it a go?
Yeah, I think that's, touting is such a wide word. I mean, and it's, how do you define it? What exactly is it? Surely we can't, we're in the modern world. Surely we must allow individuals to market their firms properly. So proper marketing can never be touting. Touting has a different element to it. I think that's the bottom line, really.
I think also to add, when I think the old Attorneys Act, they didn't emphasize on law firms as a business. Because anywhere in a business, you have to market. Yeah. So at least we have toned it down with the Legal Practice Act. You can market your firm, as long as you don't go to hospital and make sure that the patients are signed. That's how you. But you can market your firm, you can talk about your firm. During the law societies, it was quite difficult to go to see somebody on TV talking about his firm. So we allow that as long as you do it ethically.
I was going to say that the ethics line is the terminal. When you get a feeling of which side of the ethics line you sit on, you have your answers to whether marketing or touting.
Thanks. Is there another question online or on the floor? Any questions, colleagues? Okay, you can go first, Mike. Okay, but before you start, can I ask you to state your name, your organization, please?
Okay,
thank you. Thank you.
I just want to tell you guys, although there's an opinion, suggestion, but that look at us right now. How many problems do we have in county? And there are no people, there are no women. And I think part of the reason why is because we don't have faith in the LPC, right? We do not believe that LPC is going to save us. And I'm actually scared of saying this because I want to be targeted, right? Because I have a complaint with the LPC for harassment from my former boss, who was like last year. Still haven't sorted it out yet, right? And if you look at us right now and how many attorneys are there, people are complaining that we have an influx of attorneys, but they look at us right now. We can't even fill everything, right? So then I was asking actually generally that you should be out there and actually do wherever that says we are here materials. Because for example, I have only done this right now, you can send elections. But I have plans at home, right? And I can't even do anything about it. So I can go to court with my list and there's nothing I can do. Also with the minimum wage, right? Most of us cannot even afford to pay credit attorneys 5,000. So what we're saying is all these people that grudges are coming in, even though we can make an arrangement to say, please pay 4,000 for you, so that you just get admitted. But that's what we do. But then I cannot do that because 9,000, 8,000, we get it. Also, we pay for everything at the office. Let's not just pay the fees. Exams, PMG. It's frustrating because we try to say, LPC, please help us. But at the same time, it's like we are fundraising. But for what? What does the LPC do? I cannot even answer that on the spot. If we can ask anyone else here, how has the LPC helped you? I'm not sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe let's take another question from the floor. Okay. Lerata, you're on.
Thank you. My name is Lerata, practicing advocate. Too much one entirely. After she spoke, I felt there was very little point in speaking, except to say, from the advocate's perspective, particularly Judy, I'm sorry, Judge Victor spoke, she spoke so eloquently on intersectionality. Those are some of the issues we face, on all fours. You're black, your mother, and so we deal with all of those, and we pay these fees to the LPC, to the bar, and very often we feel that we are alone. In really simple ways, recovery fees, and we have to battle those that we actually trust us, and now we must report. And we report anything. When unpaid it's first fee, you're going to do them. You obviously shouldn't have clients that don't expect you not to pay you. However, then the word gets around with that function that you put. So now we're going to every time doing what you can follow to the rules of our rules. Because you don't report that to me for professional misconduct, you're the one who's committing. So we find ourselves in this very tricky balance. We were trying to be good practitioners, but at the same time, we have the rules that are made to empower us and keep us in practice. But some of these things don't work for us. And I'm pretty sure that we could be accessible to 200 grand every other 3 months. It's a good standing. Just to pay for state work that we don't get, and even if we get it, they don't pay us. I'm sure there's a real reason. I just wanted to say, you don't feel hurt, don't feel seen. And when I say we, I speak for many women at the bar, and many women at the bar. And we feel it's time we have a voice at the LPC. Maybe we can take it seriously.
Thank you, Lerato. There's another question on the floor, ma'am.
It's actually not a question, I think it's similar.
Comment.
My name is Andy Sotube. I'm the director of Tube Takes. The cry that I have is almost similar to what she's saying. I do have space. I do have manageable work. I don't want to say I have a lot of work. But now the problem is that the clients that I have are mostly private. Now, when you have private clients, chances are sometimes they will tell you, hey, I don't have money, this mother can pay. Now it becomes a challenge for me to have people helping me because there might be a time where I'm unable to pay them. Now, with the government work, I'm always told, register on
CSD.
What is
CSD?
CSD? I've been knocking. Like I'm one of those people that I really want to have young women because I'm a product of those kids that were raised by other women. I really want to do that. But now the challenge now with the younger kids that are candidate attorneys or looking for articles, they don't want to take work if you're going to say, I'm going to pay you 5,000. Like, no, that's not enough. Like, for example, just last night, I was looking for someone, not a candidate attorney, someone has a legal background, who can speak Tonga, Binti, Venda, because I can't speak any of those languages. Now I'm saying I can give you between 4 and 5, and then you come Wednesday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And then we start at 10 and we finish at 3:30. Now they come and say, but I did LLB, how can you give me 4,000? And they don't take it, right? But now when I was a student, we were doing intern for free. They were not paying you even transport money. So now I kept on even asking about, can you assist? Can you assist? I do have space, I do have some work, but now I can't engage myself or commit myself to say I'm going to take someone because now there will be a month where I can't pay that person because there are months where I can't meet my own bills because clients are not paying. And with government work, we keep on saying, register, we'll call you. And even when you say, can you give me like state attorney, can you give me default judgment? Can you give me your cost? Something that nobody talks about, so we like, so what you have, what you can give me. I'm looking for work. How do you expect me to pay you something to graduate? So those are the challenges that I'm actually facing in private practice.
Thank you, ladies, for those questions. I think the theme around the questions particularly those directed at the LPC, is more or less the same. There's no support generally, whether you are looking at advocates profession or the attorneys. There is a huge cry for support. And I'll hand over maybe to my colleagues to also maybe chip in and respond to those. Annette, if you're ready.
Thank you very much, Tibidi. I absolutely hear the cry. I do. I think that's why we're here today. As I said, and when I started with the conversation, yes, the Legal Practice Council is a big organization. We try to adhere to the Legal Practice Act. Obviously, we're a statutory body and so forth, but there are so many other aspects that we maybe miss. And that's, I'm glad that you belong to, and sorry, I can't remember your name. That's very good. And then my other colleagues who spoke as well. That's just, so it's good that we have this discussion and this conversation, so that we can work on it. And I think, obviously, there's also a deeper problem because Black female legal practitioners are not getting work. You've gone to all that trouble, did I name it? That's it. If you've gone to all the trouble to decide you're going to study, then you've decided now you're going to become a legal practitioner, your dream. You always wanted to be an advocate. I always wanted to be an attorney. When I was 15, I wanted to be an attorney. That's why I wanted to. But at the end of the day, you get there, you get through the exams, you get admitted, and there you are, left alone. So I think there's a deeper problem when it comes to that. There are so many different things that you have to adhere to this big car. There's that, you have to pay annual limits, you have to pay, you have to pay for everything, right? Now you have to pay for your candidate attorney, now there's a minimum fee. So I think that there's definitely now identifiable problems and challenges that we can take forward. And that's why I'm so glad to Anthea and the organization and team that we're having these dialogues. Because, you know, we could just sit here and have a little presentation and we all go. But these dialogues are important. And I'm sure, and I think she assured me that this is only the first one. There will be future dialogues. And this is maybe something that we can build on then going forward. I will definitely take this back to my organization. And as Annabelle said as well, it's a cry for support. That's the bottom line. I hear you.
Thank you. We are out of time. I don't know how to, I'll be guided by the MC in terms of how to go about to take the next questions or to cut it at this. Because there's two ladies I've noted earlier.
Brief with your questions and then brief with the answers because we're already at 5 o'clock and we're running a bit late and we've agreed to a certain time. So if we can just be brief with two ladies, one over there and one over here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes, not everyone. So I went to the online television for access of my own account. Any news, so the practice just a year old. Yeah, that's been a challenge. My specific challenge as was that privately, my parents made me operate. And basically I find that there's a gap between your more senior legal practitioners, females, and your junior, your more junior legal practitioners who are female. So I found that way I've tried, sometimes you'll be lost. What you lost is gap. Where do I go to get assistance? We should collaborate. Find the big maths or the same instruction. Don't necessarily have the technical expertise to work on the individuals as well as collaborate. And for women, it seems like we've written, they try to collaborate, once we get those kind of instructions. But with men, very quick, they know how to do associations and working in relationships among themselves. For example, correspondence, the first thing I look at is look for a female, black or white, sorry, female. But I'll find that when I do call them, we price ourselves sometimes out. And I spoke to a colleague about this, and she said that as women, the problem we have is that we get an instruction. We want to make sure we can make money on it, because we don't know when the next instruction is going to come, unfortunately.
Thank you.
It's also pricing ourselves out of the market as female practitioners in general. I don't have a solution to that. I'm also part of the experience that currently working with a lot of males, collaborating with them, especially in the big instruction, because we all this collaboration.
Thank you so much.
We have a solution to it. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I think you can be rest assured that there is opportunity for further engagement. I think after the formal program, and also online, there's a survey that there's a link where you can put in your questions, suggestions of how the program should be rolled out in the future. And I think, ma'am, do you still want to pose your question? Can you make it very concise, brief? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Khadija Tuli, and I'm in my own firm, K2 Attorney. I'm a senior practitioner. I've struggled a lot because I've just had to do it on my own. But be that as it may, I had some ideas about how we can raise some funds to get candidate attorneys to earn that minimum. So I think that maybe I have to pass those on to the end, to and then the other thing is, as senior practitioners, we should give back, because I've been trying to do that. So I got like WhatsApp groups, and then we try to empower the people. Like we say to them, we're not giving you a precedent. This is what you do. Look at the act and then do the following things, and then we assist them. So there's that as senior practitioners we can do. And then I run some classes of notaries and conveyancing. And people are very, they're very cooperative and very appreciative. So I think there's a lot of things, initiatives to do and enter into. But the thing is, quite a few of us have to do to make a difference. Like I have to teach myself corporate law. Then, I presided on the company structure. So I taught myself IP. And then I just got appointed to the panel yesterday for one. So that's the issue. You have to be doing it. It has to be deliberate, as Kathleen said.
Thank you.
There's so many other ideas I have, but we don't have the time. So perhaps on the online, we'll just.
Or even after the formal.
And after the formal.
Formalities are done with. Thank you, Wungai. I'm not sure if you're still with us. If you're there, thank you for your patience. I hope you've been listening and enjoyed the discussions. Kindly give us your final remarks or thoughts that you're willing to share with us as we're about to close, please.
Great, thank you so much, Thabiti. I have to say, I've learned a lot. There are many differences in the structure but the issues are the same. So it's inspiring to consider how far we have to go, but also to reflect on how far we've come. I think my closing thought would really be with reference to the Olympics, actually, as an instructive institution with regard to the pace of change. So the 2024 Olympics had the most women ever participating across multiple sports. And for the first time, it was a 50-50 representation of male and female athletes. I think there were more women that won medals than at any other time in the Olympics. And they actually won more medals than men on quite a number of teams. At the beginning of the Olympics in the 1900, the modern Olympics, there were less than 2% of women represented. And this idea, frankly, would have been impossible to contemplate that we'd get to this point. 24 years after, so 1924, the Olympics were held in Paris, right? So, and in 1924, that had gone from 2% to 4%. So a very small increase in a 20-year period. And then 100 years later, you come full circle, you go back to the same city, and it's a completely unimaginably different reality. To get there was a lot of change that happened. It was structural, it was systemic, it was in different jurisdictions. It required a tremendous amount of experimentation and failure, frankly, before we got to where we are now. And we're not done yet in terms of the challenges facing women's sport, but there's such a sense of opportunity, and there's such a sense that the struggle continues, but some very important shifts have happened. So I think I would say the struggle will continue, but the important shifts that have happened and that will happen from my perspective as an outsider on the regulatory framework, on structures that are needed, on the accountability and the monitoring, and on the sense that, people are willing to fail forward, experiment, initiate different ways of doing things, and recognize that the groundswell of younger female lawyers who are looking not for a handout, but a hand up, and not for a hand up, but a hand of kind of equivalence and parity are really going to make a difference. So I'm curious to hear what happens a year from now in terms of all the different experiments that will have come through and directions of travel that will have changed. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we come to the end of this segment. Thank you very much, our online participants, as well as the colleagues in this room. Thank you. I hand over to Anthea to do the next step.
Thank you, everybody. And there was so much discussion on the online chat group. Don't worry, we will keep the chat. We will go through it religiously and make sure that we cater for that in our next discussions. As you can see, we've even run over time because there's just so much people want to say around these things. But please don't forget, we've sent a survey link for the online viewers, as well as a paper survey for the in-person participants. Please fill that out and give us more guidance as to what you want us to do, what topics you would like us to discuss. As I said, it's the first part in a 4-part series. So we will have 3 more of these dialogues to assist. We will also be bringing key female legal practitioners from other countries. And I want to just say thank you to Wangui from Kenya who has joined us. Thanks so much for your insight. We greatly appreciate it. I know we have people from America, and I'm sure over the next few sessions we'll have from London and all over the place. There were so many people interested. I've also spoken to our team. The next one will be on a different platform where we can have up to 1,000 people. So we won't be cut off at 100. So yes, so I would like to just take this opportunity to thank everybody. On the way forward, I want to just say that this is a momentous celebration. We're celebrating women today. And I think we should commit to continuing the momentum. Let us move forward. Let us mentor and support one another in our pursuits of justice, advocate for policies and practices that promote gender equality. And from what I'm listening, there's a lot of people are doing certain initiatives, but we don't know about it. So the more we know about it, the more we can assist and say, oh yes, we can also help, we can also give lectures, we can also participate. And in so doing, when we speak about what we're doing, we can help one another. So I think that's an important area. Break down barriers and challenge biases that hinder our progress, and lift each other up and create opportunities for growth and development. Just like Judge Victor said, we must lift as we rise. So in closing, I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for being part of the celebration. Your presence, your stories, and your contributions have made this event truly unforgettable. I promise to go through all of the online comments to make sure that everybody that needs to see it gets to see it, and that we try to move forward through the next set of series. So let us leave here today with renewed energy, inspiration, and a sense of purpose. Let us continue to push boundaries, challenge the status quo, and strive for excellence. Thank you, and let us continue to rise together. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, once again, to our online participants. We are going to have to leave you all, but the rest of you can enjoy the snacks at the back, and let's connect and mingle together. Thank you so much. Thank you.